As I opened it up, a burst of cool, unpleasant air permeated the room. There in the large closet lay a couple of boxes along with a slew of discarded junk foods and old bottles. Jesus, Aaron said. What the hell happened here? I shrugged. I don't really remember. I barely used it. I chuckled. Probably used it as a trash can when I first moved in, knowing me. I've been living in that apartment close to 2 years now, and it was never meant to be that much of a long-term arrangement. Once I got out of college, I picked up a relatively steady job, and I've been living there alone ever since. I was never super happy with the place, and I've been wanting to move for quite some time. Thankfully, that particular day had finally come, and I was getting an old friend of mine to help me move out my stuff. Aaron dug through one of the boxes from the closet. "Oh shit!" he exclaimed as he dug on my old 3DS. "Dude, come on, I told you not to open any of these," I said. He ignored me and turned on the system. As I feared, he started laughing to himself. Animal Crossing? Seriously, man? My parents got me that as a joke. It was like a gag gift. How much was this? These are like $40, right? Who buys a $40 game as a gag gift? I flicked him off as I picked up another box. He rolled his eyes, turning off the system, and he dropped it carelessly back where he found it. That was about a year ago, and by this point, I moved into a new house. It isn't very big, and it's not in a very interesting area. But I've grown to like it a great deal better than my apartment. No annoying neighbors slamming doors and stomping about, and no more having to listen to people having sex in the next room over while I'm trying to get some sleep. Just peace and quiet. Of course, that silence became slightly annoying as time went on. It made downtime twice as boring and the nights twice as long. But somehow it was something I certainly would have to get used to. That night, the computer only kept me occupied for so long, and none of my friends were available. And there wasn't anything on Netflix that interested me that I hadn't already seen twice. What did I even do before this? I suddenly remembered the answer. As ashamed as I was to admit it, all I used to do was play Animal Crossing. It made me feel less lonely and it kept me busy. And that's exactly what I needed to remedy the troubles at hand. To those of you who do not know, Animal Crossing is this game where you move into a town of animals. You get your own house, which you get to expand and furnish. You make money by fishing and bug catching. You get to meet neighbors, and in this particular version, you get to be the mayor. I know it sounds pretty bizarre to the uninitiated, but it's basically just an average life simulator. It's kind of meant for kids, obviously, but it's kind of nostalgic for me. I also played it on the GameCube a little bit when I was younger, and I guess I just like the laid-back aspect of it. I digress. In any event, I went into my attic. I moved a lot of the stuff I didn't know what to do with up there. I shuffled the stack of boxes around until I found one labeled assorted shit. Snickering to myself at the comical label, I opened it up to find my old 3DS laying just the way Aaron had lovingly dropped it in the year prior. I opened it up and hit the on button. A familiar glow came from the console. I smiled as I watched Isabel run around the logo from the menu screen. I didn't have the charger anymore, but there was still a good amount of battery left. I started up the game and got ready for some serious flack from my in-game neighbors. But what happened next confused me to say the least. The town from the title screen alone looked more used than it had ever been. I would say it was a neat thing if it wasn't so damn befuddling. A lot of perfect fruit on the trees, tile pattern paths stretching through just about everywhere. I used to play it a lot, but not this much. From what I remember, the console was used when I got it, but the game was brand new. There's no way it was like this when I started, and a town this good just doesn't make itself. I chalked it up to my shitty memory and I hit start. Isabel greeted me as usual and presented me with two character choices. Two. Something was definitely up. Never did I make another character, I remember that much at least. I scrolled past Milo, my own name, and moved to the new one. It was named Joe, lowercase and all. I would have laughed at the blunt simplicity of the name if I weren't so concerned at the moment. I almost reluctantly selected the character. Joe himself didn't look like much. He wore a number one shirt and blue jeans and didn't appear to be wearing socks or shoes for that matter. After removing his mummy mask, a standard gloomy boy character with blue hair was revealed. His house was gigantic, though. Well, calling it a house would kind of be an understatement. It was a mansion at this point. I went in and it was the first thing I thought to inspect. The entire house was well decorated. Everything looked to be very deliberate and well thought out in its placement. It must have taken a very long time to complete. As strange as it was, there wasn't much to report on that matter. It was all pretty standard for a regular player, but sadly, it only raised more questions than it did answers. I was rather disappointed with what little I'd found overall in the town. He appeared to be in good standing with any resident that hadn't yet moved out. A lot of them were asking where he had been, and the entire town looked weirdly fantastic. That's about to the extent of it. No hidden clues, no gravestones, hints of suicide, or creepy dead trees, you name it. It just wasn't there. Everything was entirely pristine, save for a few stray weeds. The only weird thing was my old house. The one my character was on, Milo's house, I guess. It had all the rooms built in, but none of them were expanded in size. Stranger still, only a few of them were actually filled in. The main room was just a standard living room with some kitchen stuff in the corner. The room to the left was just a bathroom, and the one to the right was a little bedroom. The last one, in the back of the room, was blocked off by some tall dresser. Since I was on Joe's character, I wasn't allowed to move it as the house wasn't his. The top and bottom floors were fully expanded and totally empty. Something seemed so familiar about the layout, but I just couldn't put my finger on it. I know I didn't put any of it there myself, though. The furniture I know used to be there was nowhere to be seen. And if I knew that much, why did it jog my memory? It just wasn't ominous enough to be any sort of ghost and not clever enough to be some kind of trick set up by one of my friends. All this was just weird enough and I couldn't think of an explanation at all, reasonable or otherwise. None of my friends knew I even had this system, and as far as I know, I never talked about it. As a matter of fact, the majority of the time I lived in that apartment, it was just tucked away in the... No. Could someone have? At this point, the battery light was blinking red. Anyone who's ever had a DS of any sort knows what that means. My charger had been long since lost, and I had one more shot to look for answers before I'd have to fork over some cash to my local GameStop to do it. I exited the menu and picked my own character, Milo. I beat the A button senseless trying to skip through Isabel's concerning questions as to where the mayor had been. I knew he had been on my profile, and that was the only way my house could have been that big and rearranged like it was. This was almost definitely left by someone for me to find. My character exited the house, yawned, and drew his net. He looked exactly as I left him, save for the naturally occurring bedhead. I went into the house immediately and made straight for the blocked-off room. I shoved the closet over and I walked in. The room was small. All over the floor was trash you sometimes collect by fishing. A tire and 2 empty cans to be exact. In addition to that, a few cardboard boxes dotted the sides of the rooms. I soon found that these were just the ends to a means. I finally got the picture and it clicked. I knew why I recognized the remodeling job he had done in the house so well. This was a crude replica of my old apartment. This would have been freaky enough on its own, but there was something else in that little room that I now know to be my old closet. There in that corner was a mannequin. One that happened to be dressed just like Joe's character was. Blue jeans, no shoes, and mummy mask and all. The red, blinking light flashed relentlessly. I was almost in a trance, and I guess my old habit took over. I very slowly moved my carriage from the closet to the front door, and I stepped outside and checked my mail one more time for the road. Among the letters from my in-game mother and promotional items from Nintendo was one from Joe. I stared at the screen, and I almost didn't want to do it. But before I knew it, I had drawn the stylus to the screen to put the mystery to bed once and for all. I opened the letter. Thank you. Signed, Joe.